Kristen Halloran, I would love to hear more about your personal experiences with children in Scientology. I think you said that they didn't hang around the orgs anymore and Sea Org members couldn't have children. Did you interact with children at all? Idly wondering what David Miscavige would do if a little kid accidentally stepped on his toe or something. Hey Kristen, thanks for the question. And I don't recall saying kids weren't around orgs that much anymore. They are. Here's what I can tell you. Of course, I grew up as a child in Scientology, and there were not a lot of courses or actions for kids to do in the 70s when I was growing up. People weren't particularly, at least not that I know, weren't big on. I mean, sometimes kids would be coming around. I grew up around the Pasadena Mission, so I and some other Scientology kids were around there a little bit, but there weren't tons of us. Once I became a staff member, then I started, servicing the public, so to speak. There were kids who would come along from time to time, and I was a course room supervisor, so it was my job to, sit them down, teach them how to do the classes. And we had to, Hubbard had an idea or theory, a recommendation for dealing with kids that you deal with them in short bursts of time rather than try to make them do big, long, drawn out things. Like if you had a 2.5-hour course slot where you were supposed to be working on course, you might, the children there, and I'm talking about children maybe under 10 or under 11 years old, might only have to be there for half an hour or for 15 minutes or something at a slot. You wouldn't try to force kids to be on course for long periods of time, although sometimes they would be. You had the course room guidelines and rules, so you had to kind of play with it a little bit. You weren't supposed to just let people wander in and out, but kids are kind of a special thing because their attention span is not very long most of the time. Sometimes when they get particularly interested in something, they can be amazingly attention-oriented on something. But generally speaking, kids' attention flits about from this to that to the other thing, and it's a difficult task for an adult to supervise a kid on one particular thing for hours at a time. That doesn't ever really work very well. Also, that applied in Scientology that first applied and mainly applied to auditing children. Hubbard said right from almost the get-go in a book called Child Dynetics, which might or might not have been Hubbard's actual advice. That book was compiled by staff members of the old Hubbards Dynetics Foundation, not based on Hubbard's works. So I can't tell for sure whether Hubbard ever specifically gave this direction, but it's part of Scientology technology that children be short-sessioned. You only run them for a few commands or for a little bit of time to, any kind of change or positive result of any kind, and boom, you let the kid go. And also Hubbard said that, or it was in the materials, that sometimes if you're auditing a child, you're trying to, and most of the auditing would be very objective type auditing, look at the wall, touch the desk, kind of auditing, more so than trying to run, moments of pain and unconsciousness out of them. I never saw anybody really seriously try to do that for any period of time. But objective type processing you do with kids all day long. And they might turn around and try to do it on you. And Hubbard said you're a fool if you don't do it. As the auditor, if you're sitting there in the auditing session and you're telling the kid touch the wall or pick up the block or walk over to that table or something, the kid might try to turn it around on you, and you would of course comply with his commands too, whereas when you're auditing an adult you would never do something like that. But kids, Hubbard talked about kids and the back and forth of it. Generally, in terms of kids in Scientology, orgs not doing services or not being involved in doing Scientology-related activities, sure, sometimes we would babysit kids, or the parents wouldn't have a babysitter or somebody to leave them with, and so they'd run around the org, and you'd have to control them or put them in front of a TV most of the time is what we would end up doing, just like as done, in many other places. Or we might try to get them on a service or something, and then they would see as gross income because the parent's paying for the course, and then they count as a body, on course, so you get to count that as a statistic, even if they're not doing a whole lot. On the basic services of Scientology, all you really want is you want bodies in chairs. You want warm bodies in the course room. And then you want to get them through the courses. The course completions are the key statistic that's counted in the basic courses. When you get up into the academy and the major services, you have student points and you have, other statistics. Then you have completions and points. So that's a little bit of a different system up there. And you could put kids in the advanced courses, or in the major services, I should say, not advanced courses, in the major services. You could stick them up there and have them on some courses, but again, you're taking your life in your hands when you're doing that as a course room supervisor. I have heard, as far as the last part of your question, I've heard that David Miscavige is terrified of kids. He's afraid that their BTs are their body thetans are gonna jump on him or something. I just really take that as a rumor, because I don't think Miscavige really believes in body thetans as such. But I could be totally wrong on that. I really have no idea. But I kind of think that's a joke. I've never heard anybody outside, when I was in Scientology and outside of Scientology, I never heard anybody else having such a fear of children. I always thought children were either cute, interesting, or super annoying. That was basically my attitude towards kids, depending on what work I was doing and, having to deal with them. In PAC, at Big Blue, we would have street fairs and festivals, and we would bring jumpy castles and trampolines and makeup for the kids and clowns and stuff like that. They would try to appeal to getting families in, but I don't think they really were basing that on surveys of what Scientologists actually wanted. I mean, sometimes that would, they'd roast hot dogs and hamburgers and just try to have people come and be part of activities on the street, always in the direction of trying to find the parents and corner them and getting them to pay for their next service or give money. That was always, or recruit them for staff or the Sea Org. That was always the intention with that. Kids were always a barrier as far as that goes, because they were just, as a Sea Org member, I always thought kids were more distracting than they were anything else, and kind of annoying, because I was always so focused and busy on what I was doing, and kids are kind of the opposite of that. So that was kind of the Sea Org attitude towards children, was not particularly a compassionate or sympathetic view. But we really didn't think about kids very much either. Now, as far as Sea Org children, as far as the children of Sea Org members, those we kind of regarded as, I guess in the same way, maybe, I hate to go into this or draw these comparisons, but I don't know how else to describe it right now. I guess we kind of looked at them more like Hitler Youth, like how the Nazis would think about Hitler Youth, like those are the up-and-coming members. Those are the up-and-coming people you want to indoctrinate, you want to get them on board, that kind of thing. That's kind of how we thought about them, and of course that's what they were going to do. And if they ever did something different than that, or dared to have an independent thought, or dared to not want to be part of Scientology or the Sea Org, then they would just instantly became a nuisance and a problem and an annoyance, and just get them out of here. So kind of a low threshold of patience or tolerance for that. You toe the line or you're dead to me kind of thing. That was kind of what I remember about kids from a Sea Org member point of view. Not a great one. And that's kind of pretty much, that's a good sort of general survey of my experience with kids in Scientology, is they were pretty much like adults. I mean, in many ways, in terms of we regarded them as potential statistics, or potential, what production value did they have for us. Otherwise, leave them at home, get a babysitter, they're annoying, and that was that. And of course, I say that all now, thinking that kids can still be annoying sometimes, but generally I like kids a lot more now than I ever did when I was a Scientologist or a Sea Org member.